Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hi, everybody. My guest today is Trey Tate, who's recently released a new EP, and he's also signed with Resurrection Records. Trey, let's break the ice with something I saw on your Facebook page. It says, musician, video game enthusiast, avid watcher of movies. Okay, So the question is, what's your favorite video game?
Ooh, favorite video game. Oh, that is a deep cut. So I have one of two answers. My favorite overall franchise is probably Assassin's Creed. I love the parkour thing. One of my favorite video games of all time that's just super underrated, and I really wish they would remaster it, is Matrix: The Path of Neo that came out on PlayStation 2. Absolutely loved that game. I was a big Matrix fan, so I loved being able to do bullet time and all that.
Nice.
I like anything with fighting like that. So
yeah. Avid watcher of movies. Do you have a couple of favorites?
Couple of favorites. Back to the Future, I firmly believe, is one of the greatest trilogies of all time. My father would be so mad at me if I did not mention The Princess Bride, which is one of our favorite movies of all time. What else? There's so many good ones. The Matrix series, I love that. I'm a huge Marvel guy, so most of the MCU, I like a lot of those. So there's so many. That's me and my wife's favorite thing to do is watch movies.
Now, I know most musicians do something besides just music. What else do you do?
I am a database administrator for a company called CDW, specifically the government portion of it, which makes it sound like I'm all fancy, but I don't work for the government. We sell to the government. So healthcare, education, we sell anything like that. CDW is kind of mostly technology kind of equipment. So I always joke and say we're kind of like the Amazon of the tech world. I've been doing that for 3 years, but it's been a really cool job, and it allows me to, like I said, I work from home, so that's going to help, big when our child gets here, and it helps a lot with music stuff because obviously you can't see it, but I have 2 screens here that are mounted, and then right here I have another little desk where I put my MacBook, which is my Trey Tate music computer. That's essentially what it's for, whether it's video editing, graphic design, production, all that. So I can sit here and work like this and then turn and do whatever I need to. So a lot of times I'm uploading a video or uploading a post and go right back to working. So
which was first, your spiritual journey or your musical journey?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one. I don't even know if I know the answer to that, to be honest. It's definitely got to be a bit of both. My mom was a PK, so I was always raised to have faith, but I didn't officially get quote unquote saved until I was 11. However, I was always kind of raised to be a music head. My dad is a big music head, so I was raised on Aerosmith and Queen, and Metallica is a big one. Me and my dad are actually going to see Metallica in Blacksburg in May this year. So we've been trying to go for close to 20 years, and this is the first time that we've actually we have tickets and everything. But so yeah, all very much intertwined. Even when I remember when I was 13 and we really decided that we were gonna start really going to church, and we got to a point where me and dad were okay, we've got to change up what we're listening to. Even that aspect of it, I don't have a problem with praise and worship at all. I'm actually a worship leader at my church. Me and my wife are the worship leaders at our church, and I've been in worship bands for the past 17 years. But we knew very early on that we would not make it just listening to praise and worship. So we went into a local Christian bookstore, and we just looked for the most rockin' Christian CD that we could find. And early on, the 2 that I remember specifically, and these have lived with me, like I said, that was when I was 13, so it's coming up on 20 years. And the 2 albums that hit home for me as far as early Christian, finding Christian rock and stuff is Pillars. I know it's the one that has Bring Me Down on it. I think it's Where Do We Go From Here?
I think it is.
Pillars, Where Do We Go From Here? And then it was Skillet's not Comatose, Collide. The big Skillet album for me. That was the first Christian rock CD I ever bought was Collide by Skillet. Absolutely, still to this day, that's my favorite Skillet album of all time.
That was one of my absolute favorites too.
Yeah. In fact, I got to see both of them with Disciple. Disciple was another one. I didn't get quite as heavy into Disciple as I did Skillet and Pillar, but if anybody ever asked me who my Mount Rushmore of Christian rock and metal are, Pillar, Skillet, then Disciple. I love Skillet, but Pillar is my number one. I've seen Skillet like 4 times. I've seen Disciple twice now. But up till this summer, I'd never seen Pillar, and they had always been my favorite Christian rock band. And they did their little reunion tour, and we went to the Alive Fest up in Ohio, which is like 4 hours for us. So, oh God, we absolutely loved it. We really wanted to go again this year, but I don't think that's going to happen because my wife is pregnant and our little one is due in June, about halfway through June. So
Congrats.
Thank you. I don't think we're going to make it out to Alive Fest this year, but maybe next year we'll be able to get back out to it.
Favorite music?
You know, I went back and forth between Christian music and secular music quite a bit. More on the metal side. I've never been big into like a lot of pop. I love rap music, but I've always kind of stayed more in the Christian rap genre, and that's probably around the time that kind of happened. But I got big into bands like Killswitch Engage. Memphis Mayfire is a big one. That one came a little bit later, but For Today, I've seen them like 4 times. I got to meet Maddie Montgomery a few times. Absolutely loved seeing those guys. Then who else? And then I got in, very anybody that knows me knows there's 2 genres that I love, and that's rock and metal and hip hop, specifically Christian hip hop. So I love guys like NF and used to be huge into Lecrae and Annie Mineo. I don't listen to them quite as much as I used to, but still NF, KB, Tripoli, who else? I know I'm gonna leave out so much because my brain's trying to think so fast, but many, like when I say Lecrae and Tripoli, I'm talking about like Jesus music kind of days, like back in like 2007, 2008, and then when KB first hit the scene with like Church Clap and stuff, because that's when I was in youth bands, is when stuff like that was kind of popular. Yeah, still into Skillet and Pillar. Got into a little bit of like Hawk Nelson, Ann Berlin, other stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of it's a mixed bag, definitely.
You said you came to know the Lord around 11. Tell me a little bit more about your upbringing.
Mom definitely grew up more in church than Dad did. Both my parents kind of grew up with a rough history. So I grew up in and out of church even at this point, but there was a tornado that was coming in our area, and that's not something that happens quite as often here in like the Appalachian Mountains. Like we might have like one bad tornado every couple of years or every once a decade. I can think about like 2 tornadoes that have actually been like bad in our area in like the past like 15, 20 years. But this is like one of the first times I'd ever heard of a tornado coming in our area, and I was really scared to die. Like it got serious enough that Mom had me in a bathtub with a mattress over top of me. And I was just so scared. And she was like, "Do you want to accept Jesus into your life and, become saved?" And me being 11, I was like, yeah. I was like, anything to save me. I didn't say that to my mom, but that was my thought. But I genuinely meant it. And I know I genuinely meant it because from that point on is when my life kind of definitely changed. And a year or 2 later, I want to say when I was 12, maybe 13 years old, it was right after my brother went in the military, and he came back from basic training, and he actually gave me a knife that he had got during basic training. And then shortly after that, he went overseas and was in Operation Iraqi Freedom at one point. But I was a very shy kid at the time. I had some friends, but I wasn't definitely wasn't popular. And my brother was my hero and one of my best friends. And when he left, it took a big toll on me, and I went through a really bad depression. And it was so bad that I wouldn't go to school, and it got to the point where the school actually sent a teacher to my house to put me on homebound. And I was just real bad depression. And one night I remember turning on my stereo and I shut my door. I was going to take my life that night. In fact, I was going to use the knife that my brother gave me. And that was like the first time that I felt like the Spirit of God come over me. And I just remember very vividly. I have a bad memory, so I don't remember things verbatim very often, but this is one of those times where I remember verbatim. I just remember the Spirit of God coming over me and saying, no, I have more for your life. And I immediately dropped the knife and I just started bawling, crying, and asked God to forgive me. And that was like the first big moment of where like God really moved in my life.
So you wanted to take your life, but the Lord intervened. A lot's happened since then. What happened after that?
After God came up in my life like that, it wasn't overnight, and there was a lot of things in my life and in my family and stuff that, has been a work in progress and still is a work in progress. And, I've had some rough home life stuff and grew up in a poor family. There's been drug addiction. There's been people going in and out of jail, divorce. I mean, you name it, my family's seen it at some point in time. But I remember, after that night, I stopped going to the therapist. I went off the depression medication cold turkey. I ended up going back to school. And the crazy thing is, nobody in my family, I don't think anybody really knew about me making an attempt until I was 19. And that's when I told my parents that I tried to kill myself. And they were shocked. I mean, they know I went through a depression, but they didn't realize how bad it was. But after that, like anybody else, I've had tough times. But for the most part, I've been in church and heavily involved in church. At one point was in one of the youth groups I was in when I was like 16. I was like a youth leader of my youth group. And that's the youth group that I actually started playing bass in. From there, I've been on the praise team at basically every church I've been at since then. Actually, in 2013, me and a couple of people I went to school with, we were all kind of different ages, but there was a couple of years in between our ages and stuff. But we ended up starting a kind of mix between Christian rock and Christian contemporary. But we started a band called All Came as One, and was a big ministry that we did for up until like 2019. So from 2013 to 2019, we still do it occasionally, but God had us going and playing a lot of places and ministering to a lot of people, mostly in southwestern Virginia. That's why most people have never heard of us. But God gave us a lot of great opportunities, and we got to open up for a lot of really cool big Christian artists. We got to open up for Building 429 twice. We've opened up for JJ Weeks, Jason Crabb. God gave us a lot of opportunities there, and it was really cool. And that's kind of where I guess around 2019, when we started slowing down, is when I kind of picked up the Trey Tate music thing. There's not a lot of Christian rock and Christian metal in my area. There's more secular Christian rock and metal, and then you have the contemporary worship bands, but you don't have a lot of the mix. We've had a couple of bands that have been through in the recent years that were Christian rock and stuff, but it's been several years since any of them had been very active. And I knew coming off of being in All Came as One, which at this time I guess was together 6 years. We're coming up on 12 years this year that we've been together. We actually have a show next month. It's funny because we're all married now and all have either have kids or having kids. Me and my wife are having a kid, and the lead singer is married to the lead guitarist, and they're having their first child. They're like 7 weeks ahead of us. And our lead singer, she is best friends with my wife. That's how I met my wife. So both of us couples are having a kid. Our drummer just had his second kid. I made the joke when we were talking about doing this show. I said we were going to have to change our name from All Came as One to All Came Fertile, because we a lot of kids in this. But yeah, so in 2019, I kind of coming off of that, and I just wanted to kind of, I hate saying want to do my own thing, because I didn't want it to be like this big thing. It was mostly just meant to be like a little side project where I would, play guitar covers or maybe write something and put it out. I'm not really anyone, and God's kind of taken and putting me places. And, me and you talking, I never thought that this would be happening. I never thought anybody would be interviewing me about my music. I'm passionate about music, and I love the gift that God gave me. But yeah, I decided to well, I'm just going to start doing some stuff on my page. And then I ended up getting a MacBook that year. And it had GarageBand on it. So I started messing with GarageBand. It was the first time I've ever messed with recording software. And I ended up writing an instrumental and putting it out. And I, had 15, 20 people be like, hey, this is really cool. So I ended up deciding to start an EP. And then 4 years later, actually finished the EP. So 2024, I put the EP out, and I figured that maybe 20 or 30 people from Wythe County would listen to it, and that would be it. And I was happy with that. And then I got the I don't know where it came from. I mean, it really has to be a God thing. The whole thing is a God thing. But I went from like, okay, well maybe a couple of my friends on Facebook will listen to the EP, and then I just got this. I don't even know how I found it. I think I just started Googling like Christian rock and Christian metal stations, and I found Live 365, and that is legitimately how I found all these radio stations. And I just remember this was right after I put the EP out, and I just remember I would get off work every night. I work from home, so this is my office. This is where I'm at
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. But I would get off work, and then I would like grab my MacBook, head into the living room. Me and my wife would eat dinner, and then while we're watching TV, I kind of drafted up this message, and I was sending it to all the radio stations. I sent it to so many, and got a couple of them that were like, yeah, sure, we'll play your song. And then I had some other ones like, we might see about it. And this went on for like 2 weeks. So I'd get off work, eat dinner with her, and then while we're watching TV, just send out this message. And it was just a copy and paste message, and I would just change like a little bit. And then one night I got real brave, and I'm pretty sure it was the same night. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure it was the same night. I sent just a revised version of that message to Aaron from Resurrection Records and the owner of Inspiria Guitars, and was just like, hey, here's this. I'm just interested in learning more about working with you. And I really thought that both of them were going to message me back and be like, hey, we're not interested, or we don't know who you are, so we're going to pass. Like, I didn't expect anything to come from it. I just kind of sent the message out and was just like, all right, here we go. And then Spirit Guitars picked me up first. It took like a month for Aaron to get back to me because he had so many like people reach out to him about it. So when he told me that, I was like, oh, so I definitely have no chance. But Aaron picked me up, and I was like, what is going on? Like, I wanted this to happen, but now it's happening, and I don't know. Like, I'm just a dude from small town Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
like, screaming into literally this microphone in a studio office, and when I get off work. So like, it's been a crazy year. I didn't expect any of this to happen, but it's been a blessing from God, and just to see him kind of take me very much out of my comfort zone. I'm used to being a bass player in bands and not even singing that much, and now I hate even saying the front man. I wanted to not so much get away from playing bass. I've always loved guitar. I never got like a chance to play it much in the other bands and stuff I've been in. So I was like, I just want to do this and play guitar and play bass. And then singing came around kind of a little bit later with the journey. That was the one that like kicked it off. And then, now it's turned into this whole thing.
Things have been moving pretty fast for you.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but I was at Broken Bottle Fest back in September with a couple other of the Resurrection Records artists. And me and my wife and Crimson Overtone went out for lunch, and they found out that I have never played a show under the Trey Tate music. I'm like, no, I'm just a studio artist. I've never played out under, my solo stuff.
That is kind of crazy.
And they were shocked. They were like, they're like, you've never played just your stuff? And I was like, no, like, I don't have the opportunities back home. And it's funny because I was actually, I was trying to put together a band to like start playing shows in 2025. So this year, right as I was trying to get some people together, I ended up meeting with one guitarist. We had one meeting, showed him a couple of the songs that I had, a couple of songs I was working on. And then after that, he kind of ghosted me, never really heard from him again. And then shortly after that, I was talking to a guy that lives like an hour from me, plays drums. So me and him was talking. And then like right after that's when I found out my wife was pregnant, and then everything changed. And I was like, oh, okay, this is why nothing's clicking here, is because, God's like, you're going to be a studio artist for a little bit more. So hopefully one day I'll get to play live, but God was like, for at least for the next year or so, you're still going to be a studio artist. You're going to focus on what you're doing here. And that was, kind of kick me in the butt a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to be a studio artist, and it's time I focus on, going back to my roots of doing videos and content like that. And that's something I've been trying to focus on the last couple of months.
What is the name of the EP?
It's called Graffiti.
Give me an idea of some of the songs on there and what people can expect from them.
Graffiti, like I said, it's my debut EP. The title track, and it's actually funny, the title track is called Graffiti. So when I first started this, I was just doing instrumentals, and I still considered them Christian because I'm a Christian person, and the intent behind them is My favorite track on there is called With Faith We Rise. That's one that I've had written for a number of years, but that's why that one is called that. And I'll go into that in a minute. But Graffiti, the title song, was it was kind of written as kind of a joke or a jab at the lead guitarist from All Came As One. I would always like bring music to him, and he's like, well, that's good, but you need to have lyrics. And I'd always get irritated because I'm like, I'm not a lyricist, I'm a musician. Like, I don't sing in the band really at all. So like, why would I bring lyrics? That's you and the lead singer's part. So I was like, I'm just trying to write music and kind of get things started there. This is back in like 2019. He got me so irritated, so I wrote Graffiti, and the whole idea behind it, if you think about the name graffiti in urban street art, there's no words to explain it. There's nothing that says who the artist is or anything. It's just supposed to be art to be, kind of interpreted that way. So that's where that comes from. And I think I originally called it musical graffiti, and then I changed it. I was like, I'm just going to call it Graffiti. Graffiti is a fun track. It was my first song that I officially put out there. So there's been a lot of time between that original song being written, and I originally put it out in 2019 as a single. I feel like you can definitely tell a lot of growth between it and like With Faith We Rise and some of the other ones.
What about With Faith We Rise? That's a big one for you.
With Faith We Rise, I originally wrote that song for a talent competition for Youth Quest. And so that was back in like 2012. So when I decided I was going to do the EP, I decided I was going to kind of redo that and put it over a drum track. It originally didn't have any drums on it, but that one, it's probably my favorite. And I kind of had like a little story with it where it was supposed to be like thematically with the music. It kind of represents like kind of going through a hard time and getting through it with faith. And like, in the beginning, it kind of starts out and it sounds kind of sad. And then you go through like anger, and you eventually get to the end, and like, God kind of gives you peace. And there's like a really pretty, at least I think it's kind of pretty, like the ending of it's kind of pretty and peaceful. So I kind of had like a backstory there. The Journey, that's the single that everybody knows pretty much. That's the one that's been on all the radio stations and whatnot. That song was originally written in a previous band I was in called Soul Redemption back in like 2010. And when I decided I was going to put together the EP, I contacted the other member from that band and was like, hey, I want to completely redo this song. I'll pay you for it, whatever. And they were like, no, just go ahead and take it. So I took what would become my version of The Journey. It's very different from that original version. 90% of the lyrics are different. I think there's only maybe 25% of the music that's the same. So completely redid that song. I love that song too. There's different ways to interpret that one. You can think of it as like the journey of being a Christian, or, there's parts of it where it's very more specific to me. The first verse is the same as what it was when we originally wrote it. The second verse is one of the ones that I completely rewrote. But it essentially, it says, I tried to run, I tried to flee, I tried to take a life that you set free. So that's obviously going back to my testimony when I tried to take my life. So I put that in there for that. Then there's the one with the beats. It's just a fun song. I used a online program. I literally just took samples and built out a couple of like hip hop beats, and maybe even like a little bit of like dubstep almost. Then wrote some guitar over top of that and some bass with it. And I originally was trying to get a Christian artist to feature on it. I was trying to get like a Christian rapper to feature on it. And of course, this is back before anybody knew who I was. So I released it as just an instrumental. That one's fun. A lot of times I get that that one would sound really good in a video game. And I was like, well, that's awesome, because I love video games. Literally, that whole song is just supposed to be fun. So, and then the last one is Fire in the Night. And it's kind of hard to explain. Part of it's acoustic. It's mainly acoustic, but there kicks in like some bluesy guitar towards the end. But it's kind of very much a ballad. And that song is it's probably one of the most personal songs I've ever written. And around the time that I started working on the EP is when that song came to be. I remember I woke up one night and I just had like really depressed kind of feelings and was just really down. And, if you listen to the first part of that song, like the verse of that song, the way it's written is very different. You have one verse, and then you have like the chorus like twice, and then there's a spoken word part, and then I think chorus again, and then it goes into the solo. But the verse of that song, it's very much kind of the thoughts that were going through my head that night. it was like me asking God, like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel out of place? I feel like, just I don't feel like myself. And I kind of just, when I was going through that, I just remember God kind of giving me peace. And that's where it kind of kicks in with the chorus. And it's like, basically just me asking God, help me to understand, help me to be a better man, help me to be the person I'm supposed to be, that kind of thing. And then it goes into the spoken word, and I almost did not keep the spoken word in there because I thought it was kind of corny. And then my wife and dad heard it, and usually they're very how do I say this? My wife can be my biggest critic at times, but
Okay.
in the best of ways. Like she
Yeah.
will keep me straight, and she's like, I don't think this is working. Sometimes we agree to disagree. She comes from Southern gospel and praise and worship and contemporary, so she didn't get into the more of the metal stuff until we got married, and now she's used to it, if anything. But so
Progress has been made.
yeah, progress. But she'll give it to me straight, and she's like, I don't like this, or I don't like that, and like I said, sometimes we just not really butt heads, but sometimes I'm just like, well, I'm still going to keep it or do it, but. I was almost going to take that part out, and I let her listen to it, and I was like, I know it's corny, isn't she? Goes, I love that spoken word part. She was like, you have to keep that in there. And then I was like, okay, maybe I will. I'll think about it. And then I let my dad listen to it, and yeah, he's like, yeah, you got to keep the spoken word part in there. I don't think they even knew that each other said that, but they both said it, and dad's like, I think still to this day, that's dad's favorite song that I've ever written. And
Oh.
I really almost didn't put that song out because I'm not an acoustic player by any means. I'm not a ballad person. I know I don't have the greatest like singing voice. That's why I use singing and screaming kind of back and forth, where I can kind of make up for the skills that I don't have with either one. But that one was so personal and just so kind of vulnerable for me that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to put it on this EP. And then they were just not hounding me, but they kept encouraging me. They're like, you've got to put that one on there. That one's got a lot of heart and emotion to it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Anything new in the works?
I have a new development on that. Pretty much official now. We had an initial meeting, and then we actually got together for the first time last night. I now have a writing partner, and she's out of my hometown. She's somebody that I've known for a long time. And in fact, her cousin and my brother were basically inseparable when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
So our families grew up kind of, close. I basically called them my cousins, and they called me their cousin just by being adopted into it, basically. But she does a lot of music, and me and her have actually met. So it's going to be, I'm not paying her or anything like that, but the way it's going to work is she's going to help me with writing lyrics and that kind of thing, and I'm going to help her with her own music and getting it recorded and doing stuff there. So we've kind of entered into a cool little partnership it's very much in the early stages. And even before going into this, I have a song that I've been working on for a while. Me and her are going to finish up the lyrics on it. And I'm going to get into the studio. Well, I say the studio. I'm going to get back in here into my office and try to get it recorded as soon as possible. There's not a specific date on when this is coming out yet. It's still very much in the works, but that song itself is in the works. I have a couple other songs that I have music for that we're going to hopefully start writing lyrics on. So nothing officially coming out yet, but I have the goal. We had a Resurrection Records meeting here a while back. I think it was back in December. And I don't even think I told anybody this, but we were just talking about, looking ahead at the year of 2025. And I'm trying to push myself this year. Like I told you earlier, I'm trying to do more, just putting out more content, because that's just kind of the area that I'm in at the moment, being a studio artist. But I really want to put out at least 2 to 3 singles this year. And I think that's doable, even with the workload of it and everything, but I think that's more than doable. So I'm really, it's January, so we're getting started as early as possible here, and really want to start pushing with that.
Do you have merch?
I actually just launched yesterday on my website, TreyTateMusic.com. You can actually go on there and get all kinds of merch on there, and that's merch that I actually have here. So those are orders that I feel personally. And beforehand, it was a little janky. You had to go through a form and then put it in and then submit, and then I'd get in touch with you about the payment stuff. It's now all in-house. I've upgraded my website, so now you can put in orders on my website. I also have merchandise on anchormerchandising.com. with those guys, that's kind of a newer thing too. So there's things that are kind of just with them that they do in house there. You kind of go through the options and pick what you want and give them a bunch of pictures, and they make all kinds of merch that's streamlined, and they take care of it and put in orders. So that's cool too. And I think that's about it for merch. So yeah, there's some cool stuff there.
Okay, folks, go check it out. Thank you for doing this, and it was nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me. It has been a blast, and I will come back anytime you want.
All right, I'll take that as a promise.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more great music. And don't forget to check out my blog page on the Solid Rock Radio website for my guest official social media links. And hey, did you know you can listen to all Backstage with Mothership interviews on your phone through the Solid Rock Radio app or on all major podcast platforms? Back episodes are also available on YouTube and TikTok. Have a wonderful week, and let's be kind to one another.